let's talk about minerals. What's really going on with them? Why should we even care about our mineral status?
They're like the underdog that are so important, but nobody really talks about or pays attention to. There was a lot of unlearning and coming to the realization that a lot of what is preached in the health and wellness space has really nothing to do with health and everything to do with keeping us small, keeping us chasing our tails in a loop. And, I like to say, and I say this to like almost every client, but like diet culture has infiltrated the health and wellness space. And if we are not aware, we just stay on this like loop.
Yeah. So what were some of the changes that you started to make?
I stepped away from all of the bandwagons. So I was intermittent fasting. I was like identifying as paleo. I was doing HIIT workouts. I was doing all the things all the time. Like I have a supplement graveyard.
We all do.
We all do. Right? So it was just like, I think one of the biggest takeaways for me was in that session where she was kind of like showing me what was going on with my hormones. She was like, the healing is in the being and not the doing. And that was kind of like my, okay, I need to like just be more and do less. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We can all benefit from that for sure.
Yeah.
So then you started to really dive deep into the world of minerals.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. How did that come into play?
So I did an HTMA on myself, a hair tissue mineral analysis test, and I felt so seen in that test. So previously I had all these symptoms of like hypothyroidism, the constipation, the hair loss, the cold hands and feet, all of them, like so many of them. And I did a full thyroid panel, blood work, and nothing showed up. I was like in the functional optimal ranges, and I'm like, what is going on, right? Like, okay, maybe this isn't it. But in that HTMA, it shows things at a cellular level before it kind of comes into the blood. And so that thyroid ratio between calcium and potassium was crazy high. So basically, calcium was coming out of the tissues, out of my bones, and basically blocking the iodine receptors. And then potassium was so low that it wasn't allowing thyroid hormone to get into my cells. So even though like my body was making things, it just wasn't able to utilize it properly. Yeah. And then my liver, the metals that kind of regulate the liver were all over the place. So I just felt so seen. It spoke to all my symptoms, and I was able to like kind of create a game plan with food and just go from there. And I literally noticed improvements within weeks.
I love it. Yeah, that's huge. I can definitely relate. So we know that minerals are like the spark plug to every enzymatic action in the body, and they have such a profound effect on our hormones as well as our thyroid. So let's talk about minerals in general, like what they really are. Like I just said, I mean, they're the spark plug, but what's really going on with them? Why should we even care about our mineral status?
Yeah, so they're like the underdog that are so important, but nobody really talks about or pays attention to because, and I've kind of been asking myself, like, how come we haven't heard about minerals until very recently? Now there's like this huge, like, everyone's talking about minerals all of a sudden. Yeah, it's a surge. And I feel like people are starting to, I don't know, critically think for themselves and realize that like, hey, I'm drinking these green smoothies and I'm having a salad every meal, but like I'm not feeling good. And so minerals tend to be in those foods that have higher calories, that are more nutrient dense. And so you kind of have to, I guess, wake up to the fact that these superfoods are not as super as they're made out or marketed to be. Right. So, but essentially, when your nervous system is on, like in fight or flight, or when you're stressed, you will burn through minerals at a higher rate. And
Yeah.
maybe it's because of the last 2 years, everyone's kind of like stressed the F out, right?
Totally.
And so we are burning through minerals. And like one of the first symptoms is fatigue, right? That's the first thing. Like it requires a lot of energy at a cellular level to grow hair, to have healthy skin, to ovulate, to digest your food. And so with the stress and the undernourishment, we're feeling it much, much more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so when we talk about minerals, what minerals are you talking about?
There's a lot,
We don't
but
have to list them all, but
no.
you know.
I'll talk about, when I like break down the hair tissue mineral analysis test, I usually talk about it in 3 sections. So the metabolic type, slow or fast, and then the number being 1, 2, 3, or 4. That's the first section that I usually break it down into. And then the second section is like the macro minerals, being calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, and phosphorus. Those 5 macro minerals, if you're not, addressing these ones first, then nothing else kind of matters, right? Like,
Right.
So those are the big guys that we kind of address first and foremost. And then I kind of look at the ratios that are based on those few minerals. But, calcium's supposed to be in your bones. And so when it's really high on HTMA, it's showing like nervous system stress, like your body is stressed, like that it's pulling the mineral, the calcium out of your bones.
Right.
Magnesium, it's supposed to be an intracellular mineral. So if it's really high, then it's like you're burning through a lot of magnesium because you're stressed, or you're low in potassium and magnesium can't get into the cell. And then sodium and potassium, they are regulating, your adrenals, your, do you remember in like biology class, that sodium potassium pump?
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
And it's like potassium is supposed to be on the inside and sodium is supposed to be on the outside.
Yes.
And then like when there's too much, they open up and shoot out. And so oftentimes this is dysregulated for a lot of people. And so, we can get a lot of minerals from our food, and then we have to address our lifestyle. But then there's the other aspect of it, of like taking isolated supplements and how that will impact our minerals as well. So there's like that whole other aspect of it that people are like completely overlooking and wondering like, why am I so low in potassium, or why is like my body so stressed and leaching calcium out of my bone, right? And that can be because of taking isolated supplements or like following specific diets.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about isolated supplements and what you mean by that.
Right. So in nature, everything, or like in food, everything is together in a synergistic way so that the body can absorb and utilize it, right? So it's like, for example, let's say milk, dairy, right? It has retinol, it has vitamin D, it has vitamin K, it has like all of these things for your body to absorb it and utilize it, and it's in that perfect ratio. And then we come and take vitamin D in an isolated supplement at crazy high ratios, and we are not taking into consideration what that might do to our retinol, what that might do to our iron, what that might do to our potassium, right? So there are studies that show that taking vitamin D in an isolated way causes renal, kidney, potassium wasting, right? So very often I can tell what, like when someone has really, really low potassium, have you taken vitamin D? Usually like 99% of the time it's yes. And so it takes time to like build that back up.